Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Also, visit me on YouTube. And if you like this interview, follow us on YouTube. So follow me on catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. Now, our guest today is Jamie Turndorf. Jamie Turndorf is a psychologist and the author of multiple books. We're going to be talking with her today about her new book, which is If You Think You Don't Have PTSD, Think Again. You can find out more about Dr. Jamie Turndorf at her websites, drjamieturndorf.com and askdrlove.com. Welcome, Jamie Turndorf.
Hello.
So, Jamie Turndorf, you are a psychologist and the author of many books, and your recent book is about post-traumatic stress disorder. What exactly is post-traumatic stress disorder?
All right. So specifically, this new book talks about a condition I call the global pandemic stress syndrome, the global pandemic PTSD stress syndrome. So it's PTSD is a series of conditions that kind of all roll into one. It turns out that basically we all have some degree of PTSD. All it takes is one accident, one illness, one stress, and the body rapidly excretes all its magnesium stores. And the minute we lose magnesium, something called HPA axis or hippocampus pituitary axis dysfunction occurs, and that instantly triggers PTSD. And because we're under this global pandemic, basically everyone's in ongoing stress. And then, of course, each of us has had at least one trauma in childhood, one illness, one accident. So basically, we've all been limping around with varying degrees of PTSD since we were young. And some of, the interesting facts about this are that, the NIH says that 44 million Americans alone, 5.5 to 6 million veterans reported struggling with PTSD. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, as I said, because people don't even know they have PTSD and they don't receive treatment. And then add to it the Western diet. And that results in nearly every person being deficient in magnesium, meaning everyone has some degree of PTSD. It's our impure water, processed foods, refined sugar and carbs, alcohol. I give the whole list in the book. And the good news is that the research says that not only does the loss of magnesium trigger PTSD, but supplementing with magnesium reverses the PTSD and the global PTSD pandemic stress syndrome. But the catch is that oral magnesium tends to cause digestive disturbance, diarrhea. We don't absorb the magnesium well when we take it orally. So the workaround is to apply it to the skin. So I now recommend a particular form of transdermal magnesium to my patients. I use it in my energetic system upgrades at my workshops, and people can actually see PTSD lifting, instantly lifting. So, and we can also talk, if you'd like, about some of the symptoms of PTSD, because I mean, it's a topic that is very huge.
So, for our audience, I want to start at the beginning, having a little bit more clarity about what exactly is post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, in my work as a medical intuitive healer, my perspective on post-traumatic stress disorder is that you go into PTSD whenever your nervous system gets triggered by a conscious or unconscious memory of an unpleasant event. And when you go into PTSD at the brain level, you go into the reptilian brain, which is your back of the brain, which is where you're in fight, flight, or freeze. And
Okay. So
when
you're saying the same thing. Hippocampus pituitary axis dysfunction describes the neurological and the endocrine system. It's a continuum. And when you have a stress, physical, emotional, spiritual, biochemical, the HPA axis goes out of whack, and that triggers the rapid excretion of magnesium, which triggers PTSD. So
right,
you're saying exactly that.
right, and we're talking about it from our different perspectives. And from my perspective, it's the hypothalamus, which is part of the midbrain. The hypothalamus governs your pituitary, which governs your adrenals. And a lot of the research, the scientific research about depression and anxiety, the depression and anxiety occurs when there's a dysregulation of the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. You mentioned the hippocampus, which is
That is HPA is the hypothalamic pituitary axis. It's the
right.
same.
You mentioned the hippocampus, which is another part of the brain.
Mhm.
So, okay. So, at any rate, from my perspective as a medical intuitive healer, we go into PTSD when we get triggered by these conscious or unconscious memories. And for example, let's say a person had a car wreck, and when they were in this car wreck, their body was sitting in a certain position. Well, this could be whenever your body goes into this position, it could trigger or this feeling of PTSD. Or if you were smelling a certain scent, or you were visiting a certain home. So for example, let's say you experienced sexual abuse in a specific home or room or environment. Every time you went back there, your body would on some level recreate a lot of the biochemistry behind it.
That's right. So the trauma, this is part of the syndrome of PTSD, flashbacks. That's what you're describing. It's this HPA axis is the neurobiochemical stress response network, and it involves the central nervous system and the endocrine systems. And some people call it adrenal burnout. Some people call it being stuck in the fight flight mode, or sympathetic arousal. I've written a lot of books about this, but basically what you're describing is what happens to all of us on a biochemical level when we're faced with a physical, emotional, spiritual, biochemical stress. And the symptoms of the global PTSD pandemic stress syndrome are depressed mood, avoidance behaviors like not doing what you know you should be doing, like exercising or eating right, or having distorted and debilitating feelings, hopeless emotions, feeling like the world is coming to an end. Also a sense of despondency. Who cares if I eat right or exercise? The world is doomed. Frightening thoughts, flashbacks of past traumas that you mentioned, feeling stressed, tense, jumpy, jittery, or on edge, anxious and or suffering panic attacks, being irritable and having angry outbursts, suffering disturbed sleep, like I can't fall asleep, I can't stay asleep, I have nightmares, also aches and pains and stiff muscles, low energy, avoidance of people and places that you fear are going to upset you, also self-damaging and addictive behaviors like binging on the television or the internet, and even self-medicating with food, drugs, or alcohol. These are just some of the symptoms. But in the book, if you think you don't have PTSD, think again. I also have chapters that explain many of the conditions that we think are discrete conditions, like anxiety or pain syndromes, or many things that we think of as just being discrete are really PTSD symptoms in disguise.
Now, Jamie Turndorf, you're the author of many books and a psychologist. You put together a lot of research in your book. If you think you don't have PTSD, think again. Can you summarize for our audience the research presented in your book about what actually causes PTSD?
Right. So I alluded to that a couple of moments ago, that one accident, one illness, or one trauma triggers rapid magnesium loss. Magnesium is the essential nutrient in over 1,000 enzymatic bodily functions. So nearly every disease and condition is a magnesium deficiency in disguise, and that includes PTSD. So there's a lot of NIH research, stress, emotional, biochemical, environmental, spiritual. It causes a rapid and massive depletion of magnesium. The massive magnesium depletion triggers the chemical imbalance that we call the HPA axis dysfunction. HPA axis dysfunction triggers PTSD, and magnesium supplementation, the right kind of magnesium, reverses PTSD. And then I made a brief allusion to the fact that the Western diet and lifestyle makes everybody deficient in magnesium. Everyone has some degree of PTSD as a result. So, I mean, the list is long: impure water, processed foods, refined sugar and carbs, alcohol, soda, certain foods like tannins from black and green tea, phytic acid from unfermented soy products, unsoaked grains and seeds, oxalic acid from raw spinach, coffee. Many foods are high in oxalates. Smoking, GMOs, gluten, damaged fats and oils, fluoride and other neurotoxins and endotoxins, pharmaceutical drugs. I list all the drugs that deplete us of magnesium, especially diuretics, bronchodilators, and theophylline for asthma, birth control pills, insulin, beta blockers, digitalis, tetracycline, and some other antibiotics, and corticosteroids, antipsychotic drugs, cocaine. Then we add toxic metal, which we're all suffering from, toxic metal poisoning, mercury poisoning, lead and aluminum, pesticides and herbicides like glyphosate residues in our food. And so all of us end up losing magnesium as a result of these dietary and lifestyle factors. Then here's another thing that we have to know: magnesium deficiency worsens with age. And that explains why people become sicker and more stressed, intolerant, and more prone to PTSD as we get older. And so the bottom line is the stress of the COVID-19 pandemic has pushed our already magnesium deficient world over the edge, triggering what I'm calling the global PTSD pandemic stress syndrome. And as I said a few minutes ago, oral magnesium often causes diarrhea and gastrointestinal symptoms. And that's at the worst, and at best only a 30% absorption orally. So transdermal magnesium applied to the skin provides superior cellular absorption of magnesium. And when like I said, when I do these workshops and I put this transdermal magnesium, I'm not a distributor, I'm not an affiliate, I don't make commissions. I just use it because I see what it does for my patients and my audience. You put it on and it's as if you've been touched by an electromagnetic like paddle, like when they put a paddle on the heart. It just wakes you up, you're alert, but you're calm. And then you're receptive to receive the energetic system upgrade healing that I do.
Okay. So Jamie Turndorf, psychologist, author, you're focusing on magnesium. And we know that, again, I think if you did a survey of people in the Western world, we would all be magnesium deficient, and we can agree on that. What I find in my work as a medical intuitive healer is that it's not just magnesium.
Yeah, I have to disagree, because the bottom line is when your circuits are shut down, unless you get the electromagnetic frequency back on board, you can't. It's like somebody who has PMS. It's really hard to talk to somebody who's really chemically imbalanced. So the magnesium is just step one to get the electromagnetic frequency firing so that the cells are activated. Then you do your medical intuitive work or whatever psychic medium work. I mean, I'm a psychic medium. So,
right. And but what I'm saying is I'm finding it's not just magnesium. It's all
though. But how do you know? Because the magnesium is the master mineral. So if we don't have that one regulated, all the other minerals, the micro minerals, the trace minerals, they're important. But if you first don't have the major mineral on board, the micro minerals are not sufficient. But I agree with you. You need all your minerals in balance. I agree.
Yes. So in your book, you discussed that you developed a new method to help people with PTSD, and you call it the energetic system upgrade. What exactly is this?
Okay, so the energetic system upgrade, if we back up for a sec, um, I began doing energy healing and so on when my husband left his body from a bee sting, and he made his presence known to me. And then I discovered I could connect to spirit and do hands on and distance healings. And I describe all that in my first Hay House book, Love Never Dies. So that method in the book that I outline is called the transdimensional grief resolution method, where I put people in a trance and I connect with their loved ones in spirit and help them dialogue to heal unfinished business, because most of us have unfinished business with someone in spirit. Then my energy healing expanded in a very unusual way through my husband's guidance, and it culminated in the energetic system upgrade. You want me to tell you about this?
I asked you, yes, please. I
Yes.
asked you to
Okay.
say, what is it?
All
Yes.
right. So it is an energetic healing method where I apply the magnesium. People have their whole neurological system relax because magnesium is a tranquilizer, but yet all the energetic frequencies, because magnesium works on the electromagnetic functions of the body, so they're awakened. And then I put the patient into a trance, and then I just tap into whatever is causing the imbalance. It could be emotional, physical, spiritual, unfinished business with someone in spirit. And then we just do the healing in that session after they're primed with the transdermal magnesium.
Jamie Turndorf, you're a psychologist. How does a lot of depression result from post-traumatic stress disorder?
So, depression is one of the most common symptoms in PTSD. But again, here's the amazing thing, and I explain this in the book. There's a lot of NIH research showing that depression and PTSD are one and the same thing. And both are caused by low magnesium, and both are reversed by the use of very highly absorbable magnesium. In the book, in the chapter on depression, I say, is it depression, PTSD, or low magnesium? And I cite lots of research showing that the use of absorbable magnesium instantly lifts depression. And there's many causes of depression, but first and foremost, we've got to correct the imbalance, the deficiency. Then we can work on other things, but many people find that their PTSD and their depression lifts when they regulate the magnesium.
Wonderful information. Now, 2 of my 10 books are about how to heal depression naturally without drugs, Banish the Blues Now. And as we know, there's many imbalances. So for example, 1/3 of the population is born without enough serotonin. Now, what about anxiety and panic disorders? How can, in your experience as a psychologist, how can anxiety and panic disorders be a result of post-traumatic stress disorder?
So it's again one and the same, because the HPA axis dysfunction triggers tremendous anxiety, panic disorders, and so on. And so does PTSD. And the underlying factor in both cases is the loss of magnesium. I've had patients who were disabled, hospitalized with anxiety, and of course, pain syndromes. And when we give them the transdermal magnesium, their anxiety also lifts as well as the PTSD. The thing I have found over the years, I've been a shrink for 37 years. And so often people can get stuck in talking, and they don't make any progress, because if you don't fix the underlying chemical imbalance, you're just basically urinating in the wind. You know? Yeah.
Okay. And, again, going back to, my research, because there can be multiple causes of depression and anxiety,
Many.
including PTSD. And, people can be born with deficient brain chemistry. Now,
And there's an epigenetic hand-me-down, so that if your parent has low magnesium, or if your parent has low serotonin levels, or dopamine is off, you can get a lot of those imbalances as you're gestating, and it's epigenetic. Yep.
all right. So you're focusing on this one mineral, magnesium. What is the most accurate way to test magnesium
Yeah,
level?
that's a good question. So, one thing people need to be aware of is that so often a doctor will say, "Oh, your blood levels are good. You're not low in magnesium." Okay, because serum blood levels pretty much always look normal. Why? Because if the serum levels are not maintained within a very narrow range, we have an instant, immediate heart attack. So the body pulls the magnesium from the cells in order to maintain normal serum magnesium when we actually have a raging cellular deficiency. So blood tests are not accurate. Don't let anyone tell you that. The number one way to tell if you have low magnesium is look at your symptoms. So, I listed the symptoms of PTSD. That's the same as the symptoms of low magnesium: body pain, stress, anxiety, depression, um, mood disorders, bipolar, all kinds of symptoms. I list them all, of course, in the book. So, you can also do a hair analysis, but the hair analysis is going to give you an example of what your level was 3 months ago, when your hair doesn't show what is happening right now. Another way of telling immediately is to go to the EXA test, EXATEST, exatest.com. It's a cheek swab. It'll tell you what your mineral levels are right now.
That's wonderful, wonderful information. Now, for our audience, are there food sources of magnesium that they can turn to?
Yes. I mean, the problem is because our world has like such a global problem with leaky gut and intestinal permeability, we don't absorb well. So, on top of the glyphosate residues in our food, tearing up the integrity of the mucin lining and causing leaky gut and intestinal permeability, then there are also foods that flush out the magnesium. So, you can eat your greens, but greens are so high in magnesium, but also oxalate, and oxalate blocks the absorption of magnesium. It's really diabolical. The anti-nutrients in beans and grains block the absorption of magnesium. So you can eat all the right stuff, but you're not absorbing it, partly because of the anti-nutrients and partly because of the leaky gut, which is why now more than ever with this epidemic of leaky gut, we need to get it on our skin. So we bypass our impaired digestion.
The one way that I recommend that people um, get magnesium into their system is with Epsom salt baths.
Yes. Yes. So that's another way to bypass the digestion is to soak. And Epsom salt, especially if you dry brush before, so you remove the dead skin and then you soak or do a foot soak, can absolutely help you. In fact, the woman who invented this magnesium was having palpitations. She had such low magnesium that the only way she could control it was by soaking in the bath all the time. So, if you have to do it that much, you're a shriveled prune, so best to just put it on the skin. Yeah.
Now, so someone listening to this may say, well, I'm taking mineral supplements or magnesium supplement. Why are you not a fan of oral magnesium?
Well, as I said, we don't absorb it well. Above and beyond the intestinal permeability issues, when you think about when we were children, they would sometimes give us magnesium as a laxative, Phillips milk of magnesia. So it is a natural diarrhea inducing product. So we, at a medicinal dose, we will get diarrhea before we absorb enough orally.
Now, can magnesium protect against environmental chemicals such as fluoride in our water and
Yes,
glyphosate, which is basically Roundup, which is going to be in all?
that's it. That's true. And there's some research that magnesium will help you excrete some of these endotoxins and neurotoxins. Obviously, we want to try to avoid our exposure as much as possible. People just spray. They think it's like nothing. It's dreadful. It makes its way into the food and the water supply. So if we could just clean up our environment and stop using these chemicals. And even eating organic food, we think, oh well, I don't have any glyphosate. Turns out the glyphosate residues are making their way into our organic food because the farmers are using conventional manure. So the manure has glyphosate, then they put it on the organic farms, and now we have glyphosate even in organic food. So they say, know your farmer. If you're going to join a co-op, make sure the farmer is wise and only uses his own cow's organic manure for fertilizing.
Now, here at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, we've done a number of interviews with experts about glyphosate, also known as Roundup, and how harmful it is for your health. And one of the really wonderful stories that we heard was from Zen Honeycutt, who is the founder of Moms Across America. And she talks about a low income mother who had a child with severe behavioral problems, whose behavior totally changed in 2 weeks when she put him on a diet of organic food without the glyphosate. So again, going back to post-traumatic stress disorder, and you're focusing on that one thing, which is magnesium deficiency, which is
No, I'm focusing on an entire lifestyle, our entire lifestyle. As I mentioned, you've got to have better water. You know, the best is RO water, where you put a pinch of Celtic gray salt and a pinch of magnesium flakes, but food grade, um, and a pinch of bicarb to make it more alkaline. So that your water, you need sun, you need to have unprocessed foods, you need to cut out refined sugar and carbs. It's not just magnesium, it's an entire lifestyle change. You need to take away the sodas, be careful about the tannins. I gave the whole list of the things that deplete magnesium a little earlier in the interview. And then also, they also are necessary to all, you need to take these things out of your diet. Try not to take pharmaceutical drugs, you know, the whole list, so that you're changing your lifestyle and not losing your magnesium. And these things are necessary in order to overcome, you know, PTSD and the global PTSD pandemic stress syndrome.
now, in your book, you talk about the epidemic of low thyroid.
Yeah.
Can low thyroid be related to low magnesium in the body?
Yes, but the problem is we now know that low thyroid, the intervening variable there is mercury toxicity. Mercury really interferes with the thyroid and, of course, blocks the absorption of magnesium. So it's one and the same. My thyroid is low because I have high mercury and I'm not absorbing magnesium. It's both.
So, what would you recommend if someone in our audience is listening and recognizes that they have low thyroid function? What would you recommend
I
they
would
do?
say everybody needs to do heavy metal detox, everybody. And there's a specific protocol for how to do it. It involves taking, you know, you have to use, I use max DHA because it's only anchovies and sardines, which don't have heavy metals. Otherwise, the regular fish oils, you're getting more heavy metals. Generally, that's a danger. So you take some sun chlorella, you take the max DHA, and you take selenium, and that's 45 minutes to an hour before eating a meal. This is like a proven protocol. You know, I've done the research on what works. Then with your meal, you take vitamin C and you take cilantro. Cilantro chelates the heavy metals, but you have to make sure that you've got the other antioxidant supports on board, or else you'll do something that many people do, which is they just reabsorb the magnesium, which is dangerous because, see, the body sequesters the pollutants and the heavy metals in our cells and in our fat cells. That's why a lot of times people are gaining weight, because we're wrapping the fat cells around the poisons and the heavy metals to protect us. So if you're going to mobilize the mercury and the poisons, you've got to make sure to vacuum them out so you don't reabsorb them and do damage to yourself, because now they're free circulating and they can damage your organs and your cells. And then also too, bentonite clay and diatomaceous earth, very helpful as a vacuum to suck up whatever waste has been released.
What I found in my 28 years experience as a medical intuitive healer is that oral chelation of heavy metals can often be make people feel terrible. It can exacerbate mental emotional symptoms, definitely make digestive problems worse. What I find when people have severe um, heavy metal toxicity and their health is severely impaired, that they actually do best with far infrared saunas, which
Oh,
help
wonderful.
excrete, not only heavy metals but also the chemicals that are
Wonderful.
way down in this.
Wonderful. And it bypasses the digestion as well. So it's a wonderful way. And when you do it, you see like black on the towel, because that's literally the heavy metals coming out. And that is fantastic, especially if you can get a low EMF model. Really, really good.
Right. Now, so we definitely got your message about transdermal magnesium. What are some of the other recommendations that you have for people when they recognize they're suffering from PTSD, what they can do to unwind this pattern?
So you have to, first of all, you've got to make the commit. Look, most people say, "Oh, I don't have PTSD. I'm not a veteran. I'm not a victim of spousal abuse." But so you have to first of all change your thinking. Don't go into resistance about this because we all have this. We all have it, but it is remediable. You have to be willing to change your life. It's not just, "Oh, I'm going to put magnesium on my skin." And by the way, most of the magnesiums out there are not pure. The one that I recommend is from Australia. It's very clean and it's very potent. So yeah, that's awesome, but it's not enough. You've got to change the way you eat. You've got to get enough rest. You've got to meditate. You've got to deep breathe. If you're really sick, use Brown's gas, inhale the hydrogen. The whole field of hydrogen medicine is exploding now for reversing all kinds of problems. So you have to make the decision. Nobody is going to fix you but you. If you go to the doctor and you start getting handed all kinds of drugs to mask symptoms, the drugs are going to lower your magnesium. That's why people who go on pharmaceutical drugs get sicker, because the magnesium gets lower and then they develop new conditions. So make the decision to take back control of your health. Fix yourself, change your life, what you eat, you breathe. And, it's a whole picture of transforming yourself. And then, also there's the emotional aspect. So in the energetic system upgrade, I really help us to reconnect to our heart, because beyond everything else, life on earth is our love lab. And we're here to perfect our ability to love ourselves and others. And when we connect to our loved ones in spirit, they're one with God, they're one with love. Even if they've messed us up, they really want to help make peace with us. They want to fix the damage they've done, to help us open our hearts to love, to receive love, to heal the wounds we suffered from our deformative years. And that is not a joke. Our childhood is our deformative years. And so we go on a path to really allow ourselves to heal on every level, including the emotional level, because we all have injury that needs healing.
So, Jamie Turndorf, psychologist and author, you mentioned there was one transdermal magnesium in particular
Right.
that you
One
recommend.
that I recommend is Electra Transdermal, Electra with a K, Electra, electramagnesium.com.au. You'll buy it straight from the manufacturer. And by the way, I have a special gift for your audience, because the book, if you think you don't have PTSD, think again, became #1 within 24 hours of its publication. So obviously it's speaking to people all over the world. It's an international bestseller. So to celebrate the launch, I'm gifting your audience a digital copy of the book for 99 cents. But you want to grab it quickly, because we're going to go back to retail after.
Right. And this interview will probably be broadcast in a bit. So we'll share it on YouTube immediately. So all our listeners will hear about that.
You'll be able to get the gift. Just go to Amazon.com and just type in, if you think you don't have PTSD, and my last name, Turndorf. Yeah, and you'll find the page and the gift.
Right. Now, let's go back to what's been happening over the past year, which is the coronavirus pandemic. And of course, at this point, point in time, 3.1 million people around the globe have died. We've had global lockdowns. How has this situation, in your professional opinion as a psychologist, triggered post-traumatic stress disorder?
So to come back to what that drum that I'm beating, stress depletes us of magnesium. And now there's a lot of NIH research proving this. By the time your doctor knows about it, we'll all be out of our bodies. But there's research, and I cite the research. The stress depletes us of magnesium. Rapid magnesium loss triggers this HPA axis dysfunction, which is synonymous with PTSD. And it's the result of the magnesium loss, and the magnesium supplementation reverses this cascade. And it's so important for everybody to realize that with this pandemic, it's not like other forms of stress. It's ongoing. It doesn't end. So people are saying, well, when will I get back to work? What's going to happen to my future? Well, what's going to happen to my retirement? All kinds of worry. It's just it's just assaulting us round the clock. So it's an extreme form of stress as opposed to just one incident. We've never had to face something quite like this.
Yes, definitely. And in my work as a medical intuitive healer, what I find is that prolonged stress just basically re-regulates our entire body systems because we become adapted to the stress, which is not healthy at all. So here we are at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. You've definitely gotten your message across about transdermal magnesium. What lifestyle recommendations do you recommend for your clients who recognize that they're suffering from PTSD? How do they need, what sort of self-care practices can they engage in?
So the thing that I said makes us lose magnesium are the things we need to change. Change your water. Don't eat processed food. Cut out refined sugar and refined carbs. Cut out alcohol. Cut out soda. Be careful of the tannins in black and green tea. They flush out magnesium. Be careful of the phytic acid in unfermented soy products. Soak your grains and your seeds. Try to have a low oxalate diet because oxalates block magnesium. So if you're blocking your magnesium, you're not going to get rid of your PTSD. Be careful of raw spinach, coffee. Quit smoking. Don't eat GMOs, eat organic. Make sure you know your farmer so the farmer isn't using glyphosate, Roundup laden manure. Be careful of damaged fats, eliminate them, damaged fats and oils. A lot of people think it's healthy to eat either cooked or uncooked canola oil. Very dangerous oil. It's like a plastic. It coats your cells. No magnesium gets in, no nutrients get in, and it's very hard to get canola out. Also, olive oil. People think it's okay to cook with it. It really is not meant for cooking. It has a very low smoke point. Use it at table, but don't cook with it. Just cook with butter or coconut oil. Now, also, don't use fluorinated toothpaste. Fluoride blocks magnesium. You can't get rid of PTSD if you've got fluoride coming in. Don't drink fluoridated water. Try to get off pharmaceutical drugs because remember, magnesium's needed in 1040 enzymatic systems. You put the magnesium into you, you can reverse a lot of the conditions and diseases for which you're taking the pharmaceutical drugs.
Wonderful.
Metal detox, get pesticides out of your life, eat a whole food diet like a paleo diet. These are the things. If you do these things, get sun every day, exercise, deep breathe. I like to use the sauna every day as well. These are the main things, and you will reverse your conditions and your PTSD.
Very wonderful information, Jamie Turndorf. Now, you talked a lot about what foods not to eat, and we talked about how you can get magnesium naturally by soaking in an Epsom salt bath. Are there any particular foods that you really like people to eat?
I like people to eat a very beautiful whole food diet with lots of color on the plate, lots of vegetables. Try to eat low oxalate vegetables. So instead of spinach, eat bok choy. You know, look at the list, get your greens. Arugula isn't as high in oxalate. Kale is also one of the greens that is not high in oxalate. And these greens are very high in magnesium. Super nutrients. I like broccoli sprouts very much because, among other things, broccoli sprouts can help us get rid of the H. pylori bacteria that's in the gut of many people. Eat lacto-fermented foods like sauerkraut, that's lacto-fermented. Eat kefir, which is also lacto-fermented. Believe it or not, rhubarb is a fantastic prebiotic. It supports Akkermansia mucophilia. That particular strain, that microbiome strain, was only discovered in '06, and it's linked to preventing diabetes and preventing obesity. So basically, eat a lot of vegetables, eat your berries, Go lower on the grains. Really, I mean, I didn't eat grains for 35 years. Recently, I introduced one grain and one grain only, which is organic oatmeal, because it is so healthy for restoring the mucin layer and the microbiome. So other than that, back off on the grains. They're not really good for us. Eat some animal protein. We were given canine teeth for a reason, so that we would eat some animal protein. And these changes will really help your health tremendously.
And there's no doubt that given the global pandemic, everybody needs to be on their A game as far as self-care to
That's
be able to cope with the ongoing stress.
right.
Now, how did you, as a psychologist, get interested in nutrition as a means of helping people cope with
Well, I
traumatic?
was born 3 months early, Catherine, and I weighed only 2 pounds.
Hmm.
And I was ailing from the time I was born. And for the first 10 years of my life, I had 106-degree fevers and lived on antibiotics.
Hmm.
And then they discovered it's because my urethra didn't form, having missed the third trimester of gestation. So my entire life was a quest to figure out how to heal me. And then as a shrink, I started realizing that the mind and body is one. Whatever psychiatric symptoms we have are really biochemical imbalances. So I really practice holistic psychology with my patients, and I'm also a medical intuitive. So I tune into what's wrong in their body and suggest changes, lay hands on them, whatever they need. And then most recently, how the energetic system upgrade came in, which is also part of this alternative healing, is after my husband left his body and he made his presence known to me. And I was an atheist. I didn't believe in God, the afterlife, nothing. But Jean had been a very famous Jesuit priest. He had taught at the Vatican for most of his life. He eventually left the Jesuit order and the priesthood. And the minute the man left his body, he started proving his presence to me. Here he is. And he told me, I'm going to send you a man who's younger, never married, no kids, and who will be grateful to you for saving his life the way you saved mine.
Hmm.
So I forgot all about this. And 11 years later, that guy appeared. And it was like love at first sight. And I registered, wow, he's younger, never married, no kids. And he was grateful to me. And I found out that he was a 4-time Afghanistan veteran with severe PTSD. And he freaked out,
Hmm.
ran away, because a lot of people with PTSD isolate. And I was so heartbroken, Catherine. I just said, listen, I've got to find a way to cure PTSD. If I can't help him, let me help everyone else with PTSD. And that's what led to all my research to find a cure and my discovery. You don't have to be a vet to have PTSD. And then I was basically burned out of New York and pushed into Florida. And it was in Florida where I discovered this Electra transdermal magnesium and began using it in the energetic system upgrade. So it was all very divinely ordained.
Wonderful story. Now, can a person overdose on magnesium?
No, because the most amazing thing is, we think about pharmaceutical drugs, you can overdose on them. Magnesium is stored in your cells. It's kind of like a reservoir. And we need to have that reservoir topped up so that when a stress hits us and we pull from it, we don't go to the bottom of the barrel and have nothing and then trigger HPA axis dysfunction and PTSD or worsening PTSD. So you want to really fill that tank so it's there for you to draw on.
Now, you are a psychologist, and many people who are listening to this who recognize that they do have PTSD may be on psychiatric medication. What
Yeah.
is your recommendation for someone who's listening and they are on the psychiatric medication?
Right, right. So it's really great when you read the book. I tell case examples of people who have been on meds and got off. So if you're on depression meds, and I talk about pain meds also, because pain syndromes are low magnesium, caused by low magnesium, as is PTSD, and they all go together. Don't cold turkey stop these meds, because we get rebound symptoms if we do. So you want to titrate, you want to first get the magnesium on board, and then you want to titrate off the drugs under your doctor's supervision gradually. Okay. so that you're not shocked. Your body doesn't go into rebound depression, which is common when you come off those drugs, rebound anxiety, and also rebound pain, which is worse. Okay.
Wonderful information. And I always recommend that people talk to their doctor and get professional supervision.
You
Don't try and just throw your medication away. It's a really bad
have to.
idea.
You have to have the prescribing doctor work on a discontinuation protocol for you. You cannot do it yourself.
Yes. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Also, if you enjoyed this interview, definitely follow us on YouTube so you'll learn even more about natural healing. Our guest today has been Jamie Turndorf, a psychologist, author of many books, including her new book, If You Think You Don't Have PTSD, Think Again. And thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.